This happened a few months ago. I was 30 and feeling pretty disconnected after a rough breakup. To fill my lonely evenings, I got into dating apps. I just wanted to talk, to feel less alone. I thought maybe I could find someone to connect with. One night I matched with a woman named Chloe. Her profile stood out. She seemed funny and smart. Our chat felt so easy. I could see us sharing a laugh over coffee. I felt a spark and a bit of excitement, something I hadn't felt in a while. But when I asked if we could do a video call, she suddenly vanished. "Technical issues," was her excuse. Then, silence. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the screen. I refreshed my messages over and over, but I heard nothing. I thought it was just a fluke. I tried not to think about it too much. But then it kept happening. I matched with more women, and each time it felt eerily similar. They had strange usernames and generic bios about traveling to places that didn't seem real. One night I got a message from another match named Sarah. At first I felt hopeful again. We talked and laughed, but just like Chloe when I suggested a video call, she disappeared too. Technical issues, again. I felt uneasy, like shadows were creeping in. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I started keeping track of these profiles. They all shared common interests. They used the same phrases in their bios. Maybe it was a coincidence, but it felt wrong. Every time I felt a connection, it slipped away like sand through my fingers. Then one night, I got a message from Alex. I felt that spark again, thinking finally, maybe this one would be different. We hit it off, and I thought about suggesting a meetup. Just then, Alex apologized and said he had to log off. I never heard from him again. I stared at my phone, my heart racing. I wondered if it was just me, or if someone was really messing with my head. I felt like I was stuck in a twisted game, chasing after shadows. I felt eyes on me, as if someone was watching from just beyond the screen. Then I saw it. A new match appeared. I opened the profile and a chill shot through me. It was Chloe again, but her picture was different and her username had changed. A tight knot formed in my stomach. I tried to shake it off. Then I saw a message pop up and my breath caught. "Why did you leave me?" it read. I froze. I was alone in my room, but it felt darker all of a sudden. I stared at the screen, and I realized I was no longer sure I was alone anymore. Then who was messaging me this time? I didn't recognize that name. I stood still, fingers hovering over the screen. My heart raced. I felt a cold sweat trickle down my back. "Why did you leave me?" It was a haunting question. I didn't know how to respond. My mind raced as I tried to process what was happening. Had Chloe really returned, or was this another twisted attempt at messing with me? In a moment of panic, I slammed my phone down on the table. I needed a distraction, anything to pull my thoughts away from the darkness creeping in. I grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. Nothing felt right. I watched the screen change, but the images didn't register. My mind was elsewhere, back with the message. I forced myself to breathe and picked up my phone again. I stared at the profile. Chloe's picture was different, but there was something familiar about her eyes. I clicked on it, hoping to find something that made sense. Her bio was similar to the others. Generic locations, avid traveler, and a love for coffee. It made me uneasy. I was almost convinced it was the same person behind all these profiles. I decided to reply, slowly typing, "Who is this? Is this some kind of joke?" I hit send, hoping to shake off the dread that settled in my chest. The seconds felt like hours, and the dots appeared. I waited. My mind raced with images of the women I'd talked to, their laughs, our brief connections. Had they all been lies? Finally, a response popped up. "You left me, just like the others." I stared at the words, my stomach lurching. An unsettling thought crossed my mind. Was there someone creating these profiles, a puppeteer pulling strings? I felt a chill wash over me. I was no longer playing a game. I was involved in something far more sinister. I needed answers. But how? I started searching the app itself for clues. I searched without much thinking, instinctually clicking on random profiles. Most seemed harmless, but a few echoed the same phrases. My eyes darted back to Chloe's updated profile. Perhaps if I connected the dots, I could understand. Maybe I could finally confront whoever was behind this. Then a notification blinked on my screen. A new message from the profile I'd approached earlier. Chloe. You really shouldn't have done that. My heart sank. What had I done? I felt like a rabbit caught in headlights, trapped and unable to move. My fingers shook as I tried to respond, but silence hung heavy in the air. Before I could react, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message. I looked down and saw a new match request. My body went rigid. I opened it, and my breath caught again. It was another familiar face. Someone I'd matched with earlier, who had vanished too. Someone was trying to draw me deeper into this web of deceit. Panic surged through me. I felt like I was spiraling. As I stared at the profile and tried to piece everything together, a realization struck me. I needed to find out who was at the end of this line before it was too late. And then everything went dark. My eyes opened slowly, but the room was shrouded in darkness. I felt disoriented, almost as if I were waking up from a nightmare. The last thing I remembered was my phone buzzing. I struggled to sit up, my heart racing. Anxiety clawed at my chest. I fumbled for my phone on the table, desperate for the light. When I finally found it, I squinted at the screen. The time flashed in bright letters, 2:47 a.m. My thoughts were a jumbled mess. Chloe, the profiles, the ominous messages. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. I clicked on the screen and opened the dating app again. My pulse quickened as I checked for new messages or updates. Nothing. Just the same old profiles staring back at me, each one feeling like a potential trap. I could almost hear Chloe's voice echoing in my mind, the accusation weighing heavily on me. You left me, just like the others. Taking a deep breath, I decided to search for her profile again, hoping to find a clue. My fingers typed her name, but when I clicked on it, I was met with a blank page. The profile had vanished. Panic surged through me. I clicked back and forth frantically, but nothing worked. It felt like I was being erased. Then I noticed something odd. A stranger's profile caught my eye. It was someone I hadn't seen before, but something about the bio felt familiar. Adventure seeker, living for connection. I clicked the profile and everything inside me screamed that this was connected to Chloe. Who are you? I typed into the chat box, the words stinging with urgency. I pressed send, half expecting a terrifying response. Minutes passed, and nothing came. Maybe it was just another dead end. But then my phone buzzed again, this time vibrating with a new notification. I opened it hesitantly. It was a video message. My stomach dropped. I hesitated, but curiosity overwhelmed my fear. I hit play. The darkness shifted as the video loaded, slowly revealing a dimly lit room. In front of the camera was a figure shrouded in shadows. A voice echoed softly, "You should have listened." My throat went dry. It was neither clear nor distinct, but I felt cold fear wrap around my spine. I instinctively cut off the video, my heart pounding. Suddenly, my phone rang. I recognized the number. It was my old friend, Sarah. Why was she calling at this hour? I answered, voice shaking. "Sarah, is everything okay? Please, you need to hang up and lock the doors," she said, urgency dripping from her words. "There's something you don't know." "What do you mean?" I stammered, feeling a chilling dread creep in. "What's happening?" "Just do it. I'll explain everything. It's about Chloe and the others." The ground felt unsteady beneath me. My instincts screamed that I was in deeper than I ever imagined. I glanced nervously towards my front door. Who or what was watching me now? "Sarah, I think someone's in my house." My voice trembled. "Get out, now!" And just like that, I heard a noise, a creak somewhere in the hallway. Someone was definitely in the house. I bolted upright, my breath quickening as the creak echoed again, this time louder. The sound was unmistakably close, creeping toward me down the dimly lit hallway. My hands trembled as I closed my phone, the only source of light suddenly gone. I needed to listen harder to gauge what was happening. "Sarah, I whispered urgently, pressing the phone to my ear, but the line was dead. I dropped it beside me and strained to hear. Silence filled the air again, a heavy, suffocating silence that made my skin crawl. I needed to move. Instead of heading toward the hallway, I quickly slipped out of bed, trying to suppress the urge to panic. My mind raced with possibilities. Sarah's warning, the video, Chloe's vanishing profile. I glanced at the window, but the streetlights barely pierced the thick darkness outside. I knew I had to act. Grabbing my jacket from the chair, I felt a surge of adrenaline. Perhaps I could make it out without being seen. I crept toward the door, carefully avoiding any creaky floorboards. Every sound made me jump. I reached for the doorknob and paused. Then, just beyond the door, I heard it again, a low, eerie whisper. "You shouldn't have ignored the signs." I recoiled in fear. The stranger's message from the dating app flickered in my mind. This couldn't be real. I had to be imagining this. My heart raced. I turned back toward the window, contemplating making a desperate dash to the back. If I could get to my car, I could escape. But before I could take a step, I froze. The doorknob rattled, and I felt a chill grip my chest. Someone was trying to get in. Only instinct guided my movements. I leaped back, hitting the wall hard. My eyes darted around for something to defend myself. Just then, another creak echoed, and an elongated shadow slipped under the doorframe. Panic surged through me. I felt trapped. That's when I noticed it, I thought. My breath caught in my throat. A glimmer of metal reflecting the dim light caught my eye. It was the key I'd dropped when I got home earlier. In one swift motion, I snatched it up, my pulse pounding in my ears. I had to act fast. I slipped behind the curtain, hiding just a few feet from the door. My heart raced, every muscle tense. The rattling stopped, a heavy silence settling again. What if they know you're in here? I thought, an unsettling fear rooting me in place. Moments later, the door swung open slowly, creaking like a waking beast. I held my breath as the figure stepped into the room. A tall silhouette with indistinguishable features, backlit by the dim hallway light. "You're not going to get away this time," the voice whispered, its tone dripping with menace. Terror shot through me. I couldn't just sit here. I needed to escape. Stumbling back, I felt the window behind me. I couldn't see what they were doing, but I didn't want to find out. And then, the shadows shifted. "Let's see if you're really as clever as you think," the figure muttered, taking another step closer. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the living room, breaking the tension. I didn't know what or who had made that noise, but at least it diverted their attention. I used the moment to make a decision. There was no time to waste. I had to jump through the window. With one deep breath, I threw myself toward the glass, hoping it was my only chance at freedom. The world outside was a blur as I crashed through the window, shards of glass slicing through air and falling around me like confetti. I landed hard on the grass, the impact knocking the breath from my lungs. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to my feet, urgency driving me away from the house, away from that menacing figure behind me. I didn't waste time catching my breath. The night air was cool against my skin, but it hardly registered amid the pounding of my heart. I took off toward my car, every crunch of gravel beneath my feet resonating like a gunshot in the quiet darkness. I fumbled for my keys as I approached the driver's side door, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped them. That was when I heard it, a whisper carried by the wind, low and menacing. "You can't run forever." I froze, staring wide-eyed at the shadows around me. My instincts screamed to get in and lock the doors, but terror rooted me in place. The voice sounded close, far too close. I finally managed to unlock the car and dove inside, slamming the door shut just as another figure emerged from the trees bordering the yard. I caught a glimpse of a face, pale and gaunt, eyes dark and hollow. I felt a jolt of recognition. It was the profile from the dating app, the one with Chloe's missing photo. The irony twisted my stomach. I turned the key in the ignition as fast as I could, the engine sputtering before roaring to life. As I pressed the gas pedal, the tires spun violently against the gravel before finally finding traction. I shot forward, my heart racing faster than the car itself. I didn't dare look back but could almost feel their eyes boring into me, a weight on the back of my neck. I tore down the road, not looking at the speedometer. I just wanted to get as far away as possible. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. My phone buzzed violently on the passenger seat, startling me. I glanced down and saw a notification from the dating app. I hesitated, but curiosity, mixed with a fresh surge of fear, compelled me to check. The message was from an unknown user. "You've only seen the beginning." Chills cascaded down my spine, drowning my adrenaline. My instincts were right. This wasn't over. I took a deep breath, pulling over to the side of the deserted road, the weight of the night pressing down on me. I needed a plan. I couldn't just flag down help. I couldn't trust anyone. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. I opened the app, and this time there was a picture attached. My breath caught in my throat. It was a snapshot of my house, taken from behind the trees. I couldn't believe someone had been watching me all night. That was when my phone rang, a call from an unknown number. My hand trembled as it vibrated in my lap. I had to answer. I picked up, heart racing, and barely managed to say, "Hello?" A chilling laugh echoed back at me. "You shouldn't have come back." Even from the other end of the line, I could hear that same low whisper. The fear slashed through me, igniting every nerve. I was trapped in a nightmare, and I had no idea how to wake up. I shook with fear as I ended the call. I needed to think. The figures from the house were following me, and now they were in my phone too. Still trembling, I stared at my surroundings, the darkness swallowing everything in sight. I could feel something lurking just beyond the reach of my headlights, as if every shadow was alive, every rustle in the trees a whispered threat. I hit the steering wheel, frustration boiling inside me. I couldn't just sit here. I needed to get to safety. I pulled out of my temporary refuge, my tires crunching over gravel as I turned onto the road. The drive felt surreal, like I was navigating through a nightmare that wouldn't let me wake up. A few minutes passed, and I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, expecting to see headlights looming behind me. Every flicker of movement made my breath hitch. I remembered the message. The sender knew where I was. They could be following. I needed to find a place to disappear, to regroup, and figure out my next move. It wasn't long before I spotted a gas station up ahead, lit under fluorescent lights that flickered like faint hope. I pulled in, relief washing over me as I parked in front. I wasn't ready to go inside yet. I sat in the car for a moment longer, hands shaking again as I gripped the steering wheel. Then I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, someone loitering by the side of the station, half hidden in shadow. My heart dropped. I squinted, but I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. All I knew was that they were watching me. Panic bloomed inside me like a wildfire. I was vulnerable here, trapped between the car door and the unknown figure. The phone buzzed again. I didn't even look this time, fully aware of the impending dread creeping in. Instead, I caught sight of the figure starting to move toward me, slow and deliberate. I couldn't let them get close. My instincts kicked in, and I fumbled for my keys, already knowing I had to get out. As I started the engine, the figure raised a hand, their face still hidden, but the way they moved was familiar. My stomach dropped as a haunting realization struck. This wasn't just a random stranger. It was someone I had seen that night. My fear morphed into raw adrenaline, and as I slammed the car into reverse, I caught another glimpse, this one clearer. The figure wasn't a stranger. It was someone from the dating app, the one who had messaged me. They were dressed just like the profile picture. My throat tightened, and I barely registered their frantic gestures as I turned the wheel. I sped away from the gas station and back onto the road, my heart pounding louder now than before. They knew me. They were trying to get to me. That was when I glimpsed something spilled on the pavement behind. I slammed on the brakes. It was a photo, crinkled but visible in the dim light of my headlights. I pulled over and grabbed it, my hands shaking as I turned it over. I recognized the face, Chloe. Every instinct warned me to drive away, but something pulled me back. I needed to understand what this meant. I needed answers. But answers could wait. Now I had bigger concerns. I felt the weight of eyes on me once more and knew I wouldn't be alone for long. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I kept glancing out the window, half expecting to see the shadow from the gas station standing in my rearview mirror. The image of Chloe's face filled my mind, mingling with the panic that surged through me. What did she have to do with this? I set the photo down on the passenger seat, my hands trembling. I had to stay focused. The road ahead stretched dark and empty, but fear nudged me to take a different route. The longer I stayed on this main road, the more exposed I would be. I made a quick turn onto a side street, hoping it would lead to something safe. The headlights danced erratically over the cracked pavement as I navigated the winding roads. As I gripped the wheel, a thought struck me. What if I could find someone to help? There had to be a friend I could call, someone who could offer me a safe place. But which one of them would still trust me after everything? I pressed my phone to my ear, anxiety pulsing as it rang. Of all people, I thought of Sarah first. She knew about my strange online experiences. Perhaps she would understand the depth of my fear. But the call went straight to voicemail. I cursed under my breath. Then, as I pulled into a deserted parking lot, I saw it again. The phone buzzed, and this time I couldn't ignore it. I had to know who was trying to reach me. My heart raced as I reluctantly glanced at the screen. A new message was waiting. "Don't ignore me. I see you." It felt like ice water coursed through my veins. I dropped the phone, shivering. How did they know? I had been so careful, frantically. I looked around the parking lot as if someone might be watching from the shadows. My grip on the steering wheel tightened as I tried to make sense of what was happening. Every instinct told me to get out of there, but I was rooted in place, a deer caught in headlights. That's when I noticed something moving near the edge of the lot. A figure stepped out from behind a dumpster, dark clothes blending into the night. My heart pounded. I couldn't see their face, but I felt the prickle of recognition. They stood there, perfectly still, then took a step toward my car. Panic surged anew. I couldn't afford to waste a moment. I slammed my foot on the gas and sped out of the parking lot. The shadows blurred past me as I raced down the road. That wasn't a random figure. I had seen them somewhere before, maybe in a photo on the dating app. I was sure of it. My breaths came hard and fast as I tried to calm myself. I needed to think. I had to get home and figure out what this all meant. But as I glanced in the mirror, my heart dropped again. I saw headlights following me from far behind, closing in with every second. Whoever it was, they were relentless. Then the phone buzzed again, more insistent this time. I couldn't ignore it, not anymore. I thought about how the night started, how someone out there was entwined in my fate, and whatever connection we shared was spiraling out of control. But just as I picked up the phone to check, a sharp scream sliced through the night air. It echoed like breakage in the silence, high and desperate. I jerked my head toward the sound, but there was nothing but darkness. The realization that I had to confront what was chasing me made my stomach churn. Whatever was happening, it was about to get much worse. I pressed my foot down harder on the gas pedal, the engine roaring in protest as I sped down the road. The headlights behind me flickered, and I could only assume that they'd picked up their pace. My mind raced. I had to get somewhere safe. My breaths were shallow, a mix of adrenaline and fear. I thought about trying to call Sarah again, but I didn't want to risk the distraction. I had to remain alert. The last thing I needed was to crash. I needed a plan. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I dared to glance at it, but instead I caught the reflection of the headlights in my rearview mirror. They were closer now, the figure behind the wheel determined. I took a sharp turn, and the car squealed against the pavement. The landscape shifted around me. Dark trees now lined the road, their branches reaching out like long fingers grasping for a grip. Just as I rounded a corner, my eyes hesitated on a sign. Abandoned warehouse, no trespassing. I hardly had time to process the thought when I felt an assertive push to the back of my mind. It was impulsive, but I veered towards the warehouse. Maybe I could lose them in there. Once inside the shadowy structure, I killed the engine and ducked low in my seat, praying they wouldn't see me. The buzzing silence was deafening. I could hear the rustling of wind and distant water dripping from the metal roof. My heart pounded as I watched the headlights sweeping through the cracked windows. They passed by my car. I could feel relief momentarily wash over me until it hit me. What if they knew I was in here? Then, my phone buzzed again. A dull vibration that sent chills down my spine. I had no choice but to check it this time. The message was from an unknown number. "Found you," it read. A new wave of panic washed over me as I glanced around the inside of the warehouse. The shadows blended together, but a creeping presence slithered through my mind, getting closer. I wasn't alone. I needed to move. Keeping low, I exited the car and made my way to a wall, blending in with the darkness. Every crack and creak echoed, reminding me of how vulnerable I was. I could hear the sound of footsteps outside, slow, deliberate. It was almost as if they were taunting me. Suddenly, a light flickered. I caught a glimpse of another figure. They moved with purpose, their silhouette becoming clearer. Whoever was behind the wheel had gotten out too. I was terrified but curious at the same time. My gut told me to stay hidden, yet my feet itched to turn back to the safety of my car. I peered around the wall to try and see better when it happened. A flashlight beam swept across the area, and I froze. "Where are you?" a voice called out, calm yet laced with a menace that sent a jolt through my bones. My breath caught. They were close now. I didn't know who this person was, but I sensed they had a connection to everything that had happened tonight. As I ducked back behind the wall, the urgency intensified. I had to find a way out. Just then, I spotted a door at the far end of the warehouse, barely illuminated by the moonlight spilling through a broken window. Before I could think twice, I made a break for it, adrenaline pushing me forward, but no sooner had I gotten halfway when I stopped dead in my tracks. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. The flashlight captured my face, and I could see them clearly now. The moment stuck. My breath caught, my stomach dropped. I knew that face. It was one I had seen before, not in photos, but right in front of me, back in my life where it all had begun. It was Chloe, and she was not alone. I stood there, frozen in disbelief. Chloe, the girl I had trusted years ago, and someone else by her side. I squinted, my heart racing, trying to focus on the second figure. Another moment and recognition crashed over me. Paul. My old childhood buddy who'd vanished inexplicably right before things began to fall apart in my life. "Look who we found," Chloe called out, her voice playful but edged with something darker. I felt the ground give way beneath me. So many questions raced through my head. Why were they here? Why were they together? I barely had time to process when a sudden urgency flared in Chloe's eyes, and she stepped closer. "Stay back," I yelled instinctively, my voice breaking as fear bled into my words. I wished I could take it back the moment it slipped out. "Playtime's over," Paul said, his voice low and steady. "You can come out now." I glanced around frantically. The door seemed so far away. The shadows loomed like predators, and I was the prey. I had to keep them from knowing my thoughts. "Why are you doing this?" I blurted, hoping to buy myself time. "What do you want from me?" Chloe laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine. "Oh, sweetheart, this isn't about what we want. This is about what you did." The accusation hung in the air like a heavy fog pressing down on me. My mind raced back to memories I wished I could forget. I had tried to move on, but somehow the past had resurfaced, painting my decisions in an ugly light. "Get away from me," I hissed, backing towards the wall. "Your past never really leaves you, does it?" Paul said, stepping forward, shadows dancing around him. "It finds you, and it drags you back in." My back hit the cold concrete, and panic clawed at my chest. I didn't know what they wanted, but the intensity in Chloe's stare was unnerving. I could see the thrill of the chase in her eyes. She was enjoying this, a puppet show for her entertainment. Then, as if all the momentum in the world pushed against me, I glanced down at the ground. A piece of rusted metal lay there. Instinct kicked in. Maybe it could be used for defense if they lunged at me. Before I could think through the plan, Paul spoke again. "You know, we could make this easier. Just tell us where it is." What? My voice cracked. You know what we're talking about. Where's the money? Chloe pressed, her playful tone draining into something serious and menacing. My mind reeled. Money? What money? I could barely keep my head above water. I don't have any money, Paul snarled, and in the dim light his face twisted with frustration. I had never seen him like this. The boy I'd grown up with had turned into a stranger fueled by anger. That's when I saw it. Another figure emerging from the back of the warehouse, dark and looming. A shadow separate from the two in front of me. My pulse quickened. I wasn't alone. But who was it? Run. The voice was barely a whisper, but it carried a sense of urgency I couldn't ignore. I shifted, adrenaline coursing through me once more. I had two choices, face my past or make an escape while I still could. But as the figure stepped closer, my decision became painfully clear. I bolted to the door, every muscle in my body screaming in protest as I sprinted away from Chloe and Paul. They were shouting behind me, but the echo of their voices faded, replaced by the pounding of my heart. The door creaked open, and I was propelled into the night, the air cool and electric. The outside was just as shadowy as the inside of the warehouse, but I didn't stop to assess my surroundings. I ran, unsure of where I was going, only that I had to put distance between me and the darkness that pursued. The sounds of their footsteps faded, but I could sense the urgency, the chase still looming close. I skidded into an alley, desperate for anything that might provide cover. A dumpster, a parked car, anything that would obscure me from their view. The adrenaline coursed through me, making my legs feel heavier, my breath more labored. I crouched behind a van, peering around, trying to catch my breath and gather my thoughts. What did they want from me? Part of me screamed to confront them, to seek answers, but the raw reality of running for my life silenced that part. Fragments of memories whirled in my mind, and I fought to piece them together. Suddenly, a vibration shredded through the stillness. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. Panic washed over me. I debated whether to answer it. But with nowhere left to hide, I pulled it out as quietly as I could. It was a message from an unknown contact. "You can't escape your past, we'll find you." It sent a chill through me, and I glanced over my shoulder, suddenly aware of how vulnerable I was. My heart raced. They were gunning for me, driven by something that transcended mere vengeance. This was personal. Just then, a shadow loomed at the mouth of the alley. I sucked in a breath, freezing. It was Chloe, her face half illuminated by a flickering street lamp. Behind her was Paul, pacing, his eyes darting as if hunting prey. They were searching for me, and instinct told me to move. My mind raced, calculating an escape. Moving beyond the parked cars, I scooted silently along the alley, hoping to slip unseen into the street where I would at least have a chance of being with others, redirecting my path to safety. But just as I was about to emerge, I heard their voices growing closer. "Split up," Chloe commanded, and I could feel the tension in the air shift. The stakes were higher. I couldn't let them close the net around me. I stepped back into the shadows, pulling my phone out again. The last thing I needed was to make noise. I needed to make a decision. I could either call for help or attempt to slip away entirely and make my way to the other side of town. Glimpses of what waited for me at home slammed against my thoughts. There were too many unknowns now, and the web of tangled memories was slowly coming to light. My phone illuminated a new notification, a calendar alert. Meeting with Chloe and Paul tomorrow, 6 p.m. A wave of dread washed over me. I hadn't set that appointment. I must have had that time ingrained in my mind. Somehow, Chloe had arranged this in my mind, seemingly orchestrating a phantom meeting, a trap. But the present moment offered no clarity, just chaos. I needed to get away from the alley. In a desperate maneuver, I pushed past the last set of cars lining the road and slipped down another alley that veered left. I hoped to circle back to the street, and the thought of running into anyone, even in my panic, felt safer than facing them again. I rounded the corner and nearly collided with a street vendor closing up for the night. I stumbled but forced myself not to dwell. They couldn't have seen me. I caught my breath for a moment, looking back, hoping not to catch sight of either figure. But just as I relaxed, panic surged again. I turned only to see Paul emerging from the other end of the alley, determination etched on his face. He was close, too close. "You can't run forever," he shouted, his voice dripping with malice. Without thinking, I bolted down the sidewalk, my heart pounding in my ears. Adrenaline pushing me forward. Every fiber of my being told me to keep moving. I turned back toward the direction of my apartment, the glow of streetlights familiar but so far away. Yet as I rushed past storefronts and overturned trash bins, I felt eyes piercing into me, weaving around the shadows. It wasn't just Paul and Chloe chasing me. It was the specter of my past, haunting, lurking, waiting for its moment to strike. As I turned the final corner toward my building, the shadows beneath the streetlights deepened. A figure stood waiting just outside the entrance. My heart sank as I recognized the familiar outline. "Stop!" Sarah's voice rang out, but something was off. There was fear in her eyes as she reached out, but something about her stance felt wrong. "Sarah?" I called, unsure whether to trust her, every muscle tight with apprehension. The world around me blurred into chaos, twisting and twisting, as the distance between us closed. I felt my breath quicken, the uncertainty palpable. My mind dictated that she could help, but the shadows danced around me. "Help me," I whispered, desperation flooding my voice. As I stepped closer, I realized the truth. There were too many layers of deception around, too many questions left unanswered. I never expected the night would end like this, running towards a friend, yet trapped in an enigma that expanded far beyond my control. I needed to escape, but uncertainty suffocated me, as uncertainty often does. The truth always ambivalent, just out of reach, shadows still whispering behind me.